Go ahead, Rachel, we're live.
All right, good evening, and thanks to those tuning in live here on Zoom and Facebook. I want to welcome you to the District 1 School Board Candidate Forum. As a reminder, District 1 represents schools in Arlington and Northeast Jacksonville. We appreciate you for spending your evening with us and demonstrating your commitment to public education and to our city. My name is Rachel Tutwiler Fortune, and I am the president of the Jacksonville Public Education Fund. I'm joined by my journalist co-moderator tonight, Melanie Lawson. Melanie is the award-winning anchor of The Morning Show on Channel 4, and she's one of our community's leading journalists covering local education. Our candidates for the evening are Kelly Coker, Corey Von Louie, and Lou Welge, who you'll hear from shortly. But before we begin, I want to share our ground rules for this evening. For the candidates who are all here and able to join us, we'll start with brief introductions. Each of the candidates will then have 2 minutes to introduce themselves. We'll do that in alphabetical order. Then we'll transition to the question portion of the evening. We'll alter the order of respondents so that each candidate has the same opportunity to be the first to answer. Each candidate will have 1 minute to answer each question and 30 seconds for clarification if they choose to when they are mentioned by another candidate. To keep us on track this evening, both during the introduction and the Q&A portion of the program, my colleague Dryden will show a yellow warning card when you have 15 seconds left for your intro or response. She'll show a red warning card to please end your sentence, and then she'll turn off your microphone when the time is up. In order to get to as many questions as possible, we ask you to all please keep in mind the time limits that are given. Our questions for tonight have been sourced in collaboration between JPEF staff and our journalist moderator, with some questions additionally from our organizational partners. We'll also take some questions from those listening in live. So we ask you to please submit your questions using the chat function on Zoom or in the comments section on Facebook. We'll do our very best to get through as many questions as possible. And please know, we may not be able to get to all questions, but we will give it our very, very best tonight. At the end of the forum, each candidate will have 2 minutes to make closing remarks as well. Some of the topics on the agenda to look out for this evening include school reopening and coronavirus COVID-19, the role of the school board, the half penny for public schools, equity and the Black Lives Matter movement, teacher retention, and parent caregiver engagement. We also want to remind you of some important election information before we begin. The primary election will be held on Tuesday, August the 18th, with early voting from August the 3rd through the 16th. You still have time to sign up for a mail ballot if you wish to. You can do that at duvalelections.com up to 10 days before the election. If no school board candidate receives 50% of the vote during the primary, then there'll be a runoff between the top 2 candidates in November. And the general election will be held November 3rd with early voting from October 19th through November 1st. We want to let you know that you will also be voting on the half penny for public schools, which would fund school building upgrades across the county. We will be having a community mobilization call on July the 23rd at 6 p.m. We invite you to join us. And if you want to learn more, you can go to jaxpef.org/vote. Before we dive in, I just want to take a quick moment to thank the candidates for participating this evening. We truly appreciate each and every one of you. The school board elections provides an opportunity for our community to really hear from you directly, and we really appreciate you for taking the time to speak directly to the voters tonight. And we appreciate you, the community members who are tuning in tonight, for your interest in public education. I also want to thank Melanie Lawson, our journalist and co-moderator for this evening. We are so grateful to Channel 4 for streaming this program on their website this week and for partnering with us to inform voters. Thank you, Melanie.
And Rachel, if I could just say quickly, if you do go to newsforjax.com, you can also send that link out as well so that people can watch this. So make sure that we are talking about it, we're watching it, for the next 4 days, because we know this is such an important election right now. So thank you for having me. It's my pleasure.
Absolutely. Thank you. We really appreciate you. So we'll go ahead now and get started with introductions. We'll start with Kelly Coker, then Corey Von Louie, then Lou Welch. We'll go down the line, and you can take up to 2 minutes to introduce yourself before we turn to our questions.
I'm Kelly Coker, running, of course, for school board in District 1. My family has actually lived in the school board District 1 area for 5 generations. My husband and I elected to move in the neighborhood that my mother grew up in, and that I grew up in, and we've chosen to raise our child here. We do have a daughter who's a recent graduate of Duval County Public Schools. She currently is headed into her senior year at the University of Virginia, and we're incredibly proud of her. I am a 27-year veteran of Duval County Public Schools. I started my career as a middle school teacher at Landmark Middle School, which is actually a school that many of the students in this particular voting district actually attend. I went on to become a principal of 2 different middle school sites, a region superintendent of K-12 schools, a region chief of high schools, which was probably the craziest year that I spent. I will tell you, high schools are a lot like we remember them to be. And that being said, the last few years in my career in the district, I was fortunate to serve as an assistant superintendent, overseeing a $29 million budget, over 325 personnel. And I was blessed actually to be tasked by 3 separate superintendents with overseeing the district's graduation rate. And we actually reached record highs during all of those years as well, and working collaboratively with the high school principals across our city. I'm running to champion literacy, a focus on reading, preparing students for the workforce, increasing community partnerships, ensuring taxpayer dollar transparency. And honestly, I'm just grateful to be with you all this evening. Thank you.
Thanks, Kelly. Corey?
Yeah, well, first off, I'd like to thank JPEP for putting together this forum. It's a great resource for our community as we get ready to head to the ballot box. So my name is Corey Von Louie. I've been working with my community as an engaged leader and educator for over a decade, trying to unravel the systems that lead to inequity and outcomes for many of our students. I have a deep love and commitment to my community. My motivation to run started in 2001 when I was working with Blockbuster. As I made store manager of different locations, I became curious about the sources of inequity and the resource gaps for so many around our city. The power of a quality education for every student, regardless of what neighborhood you grew up in, was a passionate issue for my family, as my grandfather was a principal during the era of desegregation. When I returned to school, I spent 2 years studying the inequities within our school system, focusing on the policies, the practices, and the people that are impacted. As a teacher, I focused on the practices of empowering teachers, students, and families. As a principal, I focused on the policies and programs that empowered leaders to attract, train, and retain great teachers. Our school board has a great responsibility to ensure that we review and dismantle the policies that have led to outcomes gaps that grow wider and wider each year, abandoning communities of our children. I am the only candidate that has a child or children that currently attend my neighborhood schools. I'm the only candidate that has taught during a pandemic. I'm the only candidate that has a public and charter school experience. And I am the only candidate that has public policy background. And lastly, I'm the only candidate that has made equity the center of my campaign. I will use all of my lived experiences to make thoughtful decisions for students, parents, teachers, and our community. I look forward to sharing some of my ideas tonight.
Awesome. Thanks, Corey. Lou?
Good evening. Thank you for having me. My name is Lou Andrew Welge. My initials spell law, so vote for law. I was born here in Jacksonville. I grew up in Northern Virginia. An 18-year veteran guidance counselor. I was also privileged to teach stress and anxiety management at the University of Florida for 2 semesters. I have a deep love for learning. I'm a lifelong learner. The best metaphor for education generally is the candle. We teachers inspire our children to learn. And there's only one way we teach, it's by our example, and hopefully with enthusiasm. It's unprecedented and changing times. The great Neil Postman, media scholar, said we're transitioning from a literacy-based learning environment to an iconographic, image-based learning environment. He said that 20 years ago. So memes are a great way of teaching. You see me talking right now. This image is helping you to detect my sincerity in my campaign as a guidance counselor. I know that listening is more important than talking. I will be receptive and an active listener to the constituents in the District 1, Arlington and Northeast Duval. I'm an Abraham Lincoln reenactor, and I will be bringing living history into the classrooms because there's much to learn from Honest Abe, who got criticized from the plantation aristocracy of the Old South and got criticized from the abolitionists too. So trying to hew that middle ground balance is key. Please vote for me. Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you, Lou. And now we'll turn to questions. I'll turn it over to Melanie.
All right, good evening, everyone. Again, my pleasure to be here. You know, we have talked a lot about the plans to reopen schools, and, you know, we've seen a lot of changes and suggestions and mandates and consequences if that doesn't happen the way that different groups feel it should. But it puts everybody in a bind as far as how do you do that safely. So I'm going to direct my first question to Kelly. So how do you think DCPS should interpret Commissioner Richard Corrigan's executive order about schools reopening brick and mortar 5 days per week? And what would a reopening plan look like if you were a school board member?
So I think it's a little speculative to totally attempt to interpret the commissioner's order, but I will say I think he does mean in the basis 5 days is 5 days. As an assistant superintendent, there were times I was part of a team that received these types of communications, and often on the backside of this, I think it's important our public know that there is a reality that there's a technical assistance piece that's provided to help school districts as they go through interpreting these types of documents. And school districts are allowed the opportunity to let the FDOE, the Florida Department of Education, know about specific things that are associated with their district. Certainly we would want to look at, our testing rates and where our current COVID rates are and whatnot in contrast to another district. So again, I just think we have to be careful about that, but I think options have to be there. And I applaud the superintendent and her work thus far in providing those options for all of our parents and our students.
All right, thank you, Kelly. All right, Corey, same question, interpreting reopening schools 5 days a week, and then also what would your reopening plan look like?
Yeah, I think we have, in order to, when we think about reopening schools, equity and safety have got to be top of mind. As a teacher, when we close the schools in the spring, I saw about a quarter of my students fall off the grid, either due to technology issues, experience using the technology, or an accessible adult to help a 6-year-old log on. It's not an easy task for a parent. I'm a parent of a 7-year-old, and you just don't tell them to go log on. It takes a lot of moving parts to make it all work. But schoolhouses, we've got to get them open, but it has to be done safely. I would be supportive of a delayed start until we can get our cases down to a safe level. Definitely mandatory masks. Reduce our class sizes. And I think the messaging from our district should be, if you can do virtual school, do that. But it's not for everybody. Because I know, like for me and my family, online did not work for us, but we've got to make it equitable for everybody.
Okay. Thank you, Corey. Lou, same question. Okay, so Lou, we're not hearing you. So
there we go.
Okay, we'll start your time now. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. The Duval County Public Schools are a very large, heterogeneous organization with numerous and various constituencies, each of which are capable of different, quote, interpretations of Mr. Corcoran's or any state level executive's orders or recommendations on when or how our 67 Florida school districts will and should reopen after this unprecedented and for many terrifying experience. I expect to be one of the 4 newly elected or re-elected board members who will join the other 3, and I'll naturally be open-minded as we 7 members listen closely and seriously considered all reasonable and viable options. So with my participation, I'll advocate for the reopening plan to be flexible with reasonable options and tolerance for relatively minor differences of opinion. Of course, safety first.
Awesome. Thank you all so much. And as we continue, another question that relates to reopening schools amidst the pandemic. Some of school board members' most important constituents are, of course, parents. Curious to hear each of you speak to how you would help reach families of students who have dropped off the radar since schools closed this spring, families who speak a language other than English, those who are living in poverty, who are homeless, grandparents perhaps. This time we'll start with Corey.
Yeah, so I am a parent of two school-age students. They attend my local neighborhood school. I think I'm gonna leverage my teacher experience, my parent experience, and we're gonna meet parents where they are. As a principal, I gave out and a teacher, I gave out my phone number, and for anybody to reach out and text me, call me, reach out to me however they need to express their concerns. If I need to, I would go to people's houses and talk door to door to find where parents are, what do they need in order to get back into school, to get and do it in an equitable way that provides access and tools to the schoolhouse. The schoolhouse alleviates all barriers, most barriers that a lot of families have, and we've got to get our kids in front of those tools.
Thanks, Corey. Now we'll turn to you, Lou, for your thoughts on that question.
Regarding outreach to underserved populations, I will insist that all District 1 schools maintain an accurate and nearly continuously updated database of enrolled students to both prevent anyone's being overlooked, as well as to catch them, the vast majority being good. The overemphasis on compliance with less emphasis on cooperation in classrooms, with grade levels. The mention was made of middle school. Middle school is key. I met Paul George, who invented the middle school concept, and that transition year from from 5th to 6th, and then from 7th to 8th, and then 8th to high school is critical. And
15 seconds.
And the database, we're going to call. We don't want to threaten anybody, and so we're going to maintain that database and stay connected with these folks.
Awesome. Thanks, Lou. Kelly?
Sure. I don't think you can have just one approach in engaging the populations that are referenced in the question. I believe there has to be a comprehensive district-wide plan that includes strategies that might be classified as in-person support, or maybe voice-to-voice connections, or maybe electronic connections. For example, an in-person support might be that we work with our social workers and disperse them across the district to ensure that they're hitting the target areas that we know we've lost population or have disconnected population. An electronic item might be something as simple as, quite candidly, if we're sending out text messages, if we're sending them out to families that speak a different language, that we make sure those text messages are sent out in that native language. Finally, I think we've got to work with our nonprofits. We've got wonderful nonprofits that give services all across our city. We need to give information to them as these parents and community members connect to those nonprofits. They can share information about our school district and how to connect back as well.
Thanks, Kathy. Melanie?
All right, so we'll turn our attention now to issues of race. And, we've seen it dominate the news cycle for weeks now, and it's definitely going to play out in the classrooms come fall. So we are living through a transformational time right now with Black Lives Matter movement. There's a lot of polarizing views. Kids are hearing it in their homes, and they are going to talk about it, and they are going to respond. And we encourage kids to express themselves on issues like racism and equality, and do it fairly and openly and listen. So what role do you think our public schools can play in creating a safe space for all students with lots of different opinions to engage in conversations about race and make it part of the educational system? And I'll send that question first to Lou.
Yes, the public schools play a vital role in fostering discussion and dialogue on especially controversial issues. And it's nearly essential to preface any conversation with the acknowledgement of the fact we, the people, know what our needs are, because the great Abraham Maslow identified and prioritized them for us nearly 70 years ago in his rightly renowned hierarchy of needs. The lower order needs are for food, clothing, and shelter. When I counseled kids and they complained about their parents, oftentimes I said, your parents are obligated to provide food, clothing, and shelter to you. Beyond that, they want to help you feel safe and secure. If those lower level needs are not met with children, then I don't think it's not a good idea to begin overemphasizing paper and pencil tests in assessment practices. So, hierarchy of needs. We're going to look at the hierarchy of needs. Socialization and self-actualization are the highest order needs that we all have. And thanks for helping me self-actualize right now. Thanks.
All right, Lou, thank you so much. All right, Kelly, same question when it comes to allowing for students to have a safe space to express themselves, and what role do you think the school district has in helping to facilitate that?
So I believe the school district has to be a place where our students can be supported in expressing themselves. I think it starts though with making sure our teachers are given two things. One, training on how to handle really sensitive issues, and two, space to let our teachers grapple with where they are with all that's happened in the last few months. I think we're all changed completely and differently. I also think that we've got to give our students more credit than we often do, which I come from a place of, after the Stoneman Douglas high school shootings, a number of students wanted to have walkouts about how to curtail gun violence and whatnot. Many school districts across the country tried to suppress these walkouts. In Duval County Public Schools, as a leadership team, we decided to support our students and we helped them organize. And in the end, the walkouts were organized, they were peaceful, and they were impactful. And we allowed our children to have voice in the scenario. And I think that's important.
All right, thank you, Kelly. Corey, same question?
Yeah, so equity has been at the center of not just by my campaign, but all of my educational experience. Has been revolving around creating more equitable systems for our students as a teacher and as a leader. If we've got to move our school system to a more equity-minded system through culturally responsive pedagogy from our teachers and our leaders. I think that's going to build relationships with kids. And when kids have a relationship with a teacher, they feel more connected to that school and the teacher, and we're able to share their lived experiences, and they'll be able to held as an asset instead of a barrier. And so ultimately, we need to have a place where our teachers can confront their unconscious bias, students can confront their unconscious bias, and all students can thrive.
Excellent. Thank you all so much. Kelly, we'll start with you for this next one. We also know that we have made significant progress in Duval County. And although we still have just some persistent disparities by race in our schools, including school student discipline, access to gifted and advanced courses, and overall educational outcomes. Would love to hear your thoughts on what DCPS has done well and what remains to be done.
I'd be happy to talk to that, because there are a lot of things our district has done well. And you speak to two items that actually I worked with deliberately when I was on cabinet. First is gifted programs. And we moved from a screener that was traditionally really more towards one ethnicity and did a screener that allowed for more cultural diversity. In the end, when we did that, we also did a universal screening process for all second graders. So students no longer had to wait for a parent or a teacher to nominate them. Every child in our district had an opportunity to be screened. This resulted in a more diverse student population in gifted programs. It also resulted in children from multiple socioeconomic levels coming into gifted programs. I will also say on the advanced and accelerated programs, parents should take a look and community members should take a look at the work that was done around dual enrollment. It has put us as second among districts in the state of Florida for acceleration, and it's been wonderful work that's happened.
Excellent. Thanks, Kelly. Corey, persistent disparities by race. What has been done well? What remains to be done?
Well, when I think about this question, I think about, like, it goes back to this idea that I'm talking about, equity mindset, right? So if we have more teachers who viewed students' lived experience as an asset-based thinking versus deficit-based thinking, then the disparity between African-American graduation rates and white graduation rates would be closer. It wouldn't be as large. And I know that our school, you know, for example, my school that I'm teaching at right now at SA Hull, we had a significant reduction in referrals at the start of the year. Our teachers felt empowered to be able to handle minor issues through restorative practices than through an immediate referral. Teachers have got to be empowered to be able to handle the restorative practices in their rooms. Otherwise, what I think about is the school to prison pipeline. We've got to make sure that the disparity between students' discipline is not the thing that's going to be the disruptive to the students' outcomes. And I'd love to see an investment in restorative practice across the board.
Thanks, Corey. Lou, your thoughts? Persistent disparities by race. What's been done well, and what else do we need to do?
Yeah, recalling the last 11 of my 18 public school guidance counseling career years here in Jackson, I believe we're at the largest land area in the country, and we're racially diverse, we're economically diverse. Unfortunately, the income gap and the stressors involved in parents not having a living wage, I can't imagine it. It needs to be a factor in considering a child's educational program as we assess their improvement. We need to focus on improvement with kids. And another thing, a couple things, I'll encourage all District 1 middle and high schools to take advantage of the Southern Poverty Law Center's free teaching tolerance program. I'll also heavily emphasize a peer facilitator program where kids help kids.
All right, thank you, Lou. I appreciate that. And kind of on the same line as that, I want to throw this question first to Corey. And because this has become a political issue, it's something you'll have to kind of navigate with a fine line. It's a delicate balance here. But how will you prioritize anti-racism and implicit bias education in yourself and also in your position on the school board to kind of open up that conversation there? And then how do you plan to incorporate this type of education for not only staff, but for students, their families, and then working that into the curriculum so it's something that's learned and taught on a yearly basis versus just maybe once in the whole time of students matriculating? And again, that's to Corey.
Yeah, so this is being anti-racist is a process. It's a process of dismantling the smallest behaviors that you have. So this is something I've been working on for a while. I'm not perfect yet. I'm still working on it. But at the least thing we need as a district, we should be having these discussions about implicit bias and unconscious bias with teachers. I think we need to be working with our teachers because teachers have the biggest impact with students. But in order for us to move to a more equity-minded system, I would love to see something like micro-credentialing, where teachers can receive credit or stipend for classes that they can take around culturally responsive teaching, culturally relevant literature, opportunity gap studies, equity mindset pedagogy. Not only will it support teachers in building relationships with all the students, but it'll really strengthen the relationships they have with Black and Brown students. It'll just be a good, inclusive experience for all.
Thank you, Corey. Lou, I will send that question to you as well. Prioritizing this not only for the school board, but for the staff, students, families, and curriculum, this type of discussion and education.
When I was first hired in '93 at Northwestern Middle School as an in-school suspension counselor, it was a dropout prevention program, and we assessed kids' behavior hourly with the group and trying to catch them being good. It's important to think of the worst case scenario. If the kid walked out of the room, we said, hey, keep your seat. They walked out of the room. I would say to the group, rather than chasing him and giving him attention, I would say to the group, it could have been worse. He could have knocked over a desk and been violent before he left. We have a right to our preferences. We don't have a right to exercise prejudice when we're in power positions. And as teachers and as parents, we're in power positions over students. So birds of a feather flock together, and implicit bias. You know, we have preferences. We shouldn't be denied our preferences, but prejudice should be, you know, not forbidden, but certainly discouraged.
All right, thank you so much. Kelly, same question.
Sure. I think we're just at such an interesting time in history, and I personally feel like I've been grappling with these issues my entire life. And in the end, I do believe in having hard conversations and dialogue that at times may make people uncomfortable, things like study circles and whatnot. But these conversations help us to move forward in our thoughts. Having been a principal at 2 different school sites, I'm a firm believer in thoughtful, well-designed training that gives teachers the opportunity to come to terms with what they really believe about race, not what they tout to others, but what they truly believe in their heart. And I think that training also can allow us to more thoughtfully respond to children when they give us these types of issues and bring us things that we need to help them work through, and that can help us in removing the implicit bias that occurs all too frequently in the world around us. And then you can extend that training across through things like parent academies and such to families and parents in our community as well.
Excellent. Thank each of you. Lou, we'll start with you for this next question. What is your opinion on renaming the 6 schools in Duval County currently named after Confederate soldiers? Are there other school names that you think should be readdressed?
Yes, I agree. You know, there's people talk about cultural heritage and heritage not hate, and these have become platitudes. My last 3 years were at Kirby Smith Magnet School. He was a Confederate general. He was a medical doctor. He did fine things, but being on the secessionist side in the Civil War makes him disloyal to the idea of union and togetherness. I agree with Corey on this. Lincoln said, equality beats inequality. And when you have de facto, I mean, de jure, separate but equal, it's inherently unequal. You know, Robert E. Lee, you know, I wouldn't go back as far as Andrew Jackson, because that's in the 1830s. And I'm a First Nation supporter too, free Leonard Peltier. You know, but with Civil War generals, yes, let's rename the schools.
Thank you, Lou. Kelly, what's your opinion on the renaming of the 6 schools currently named after Confederate soldiers? And are there any other names you think should be readdressed?
Sure. I'm grateful that we're renaming the 6 schools. As someone whose family's lived in the city for 5 generations, it's a long time coming, and it needs to happen. That being said, we have over 170 plus school sites, and a lot of schools that are named after people. And I was a history major, but I will say I don't profess to know the history of every single one of them. And I think that's where our board policy comes in, which allows for schools and school communities to look at individual schools, read the history on those schools, and make some determinations. And if a school community finds that something is there that they're uncomfortable with, that doesn't espouse their values and who they are, then absolutely we need to begin the steps to renaming that school. I will also say, in a side note, when that happens, I will say when we renamed Nathan Forrest, Dr. Gregory Bostic, who is the principal there, one of our best principals in the district, put together some processes and procedures to allow for student voice and community voice. We need to go back to some of those processes to make sure all voices are heard.
Thank you, Kelly. Corey, your thoughts on the renaming of 6 schools currently named after Confederate soldiers, and any other schools that you might consider readdressing their name?
Yeah, so first step, yeah, we should remove those names from the schools. They don't belong on our school buildings right now. We also, we could rename them after hometown heroes, named after different neighborhoods. There are some underrepresented neighborhoods that would love to have a school with their name on it. I think what a great way to build pride in a neighborhood. Second thing I want to say about this too is I love how the community has stepped up and then remove some of those financial barriers. So like people are like, yeah, I want to remove them, but it's going to cost $1 million. I love that the community has stepped up and they're starting to raise private funds to do that. And I think when we think about the other names that are problematic, we should that should be a part of a discussion, like kind of like what Kelly just said. Like we should have a discussion about it and be a larger community decision about what those names are and what they mean. So that's when I think about that.
Thanks, Corey.
All right, first, I want to say you guys are doing amazing at keeping at your time because these are tough questions and you could probably talk about them all day. So thank you, you're doing a fabulous job. And this one's even more difficult to consider in 1 minute, but we're asking you to do it. So what is your perspective on school choice and the use of public funding for charter schools, private schools through vouchers? And how should the district and the school board provide support and accountability to all schools receiving public funds, including charter and private schools? And I'll send that question first to you, Kelly.
So having been a magnet principal of 2 different school sites, I'm a firm believer in choice, and my daughter attended neighborhood schools. She also attended magnet programs. I will say my goal is always that neighborhood schools meet the needs of the individual parents and children, but if they don't, we want public school options out there for our parents and our children to consider. I will say that while I do not believe that charter schools should receive any additional funds over and above what traditional schools receive, I do believe we have a moral and legal responsibility to ensure that the children within them receive an education that prepares them for college, career, and life. When I was tasked with working on the graduation rate, I worked specifically with our charter schools. They did a great job of meeting the goals that we set, and we designed collaboratively. And I think we've got to have more work like that done throughout the district where there's collaborative processes going on.
All right, Kelly, thank you so much. Yeah, if I could just ask you a follow-up to that, because I do think that what we're seeing is that is something everyone's expressing, that collaboration is what they want. But it has been very polarizing and difficult to accomplish that. So could you make a suggestion on how you could see that collaboration actually being effective?
Oh, absolutely. As an assistant superintendent, I referenced the graduation rate. We worked with the graduation rate is done, it's calculated by district schools, traditional schools, plus our charter schools. We had to have conversation with charters. And quite honestly, when we did, they came to the table and they were wonderful to work with, and we set joint goals and we shared resources. And in the end, the district graduation went up, rate went up for everyone. Our traditional schools worked hard, our principals were amazing, and our charter schools worked hard, and their principals and teachers were amazing as well. We got past those barriers.
Kelly, thank you for that follow-up. Again, we'll post this to Corey, and it's your perspective on school choice, dividing this funding up in vouchers, and also how do you have accountability and how do you support non-traditional public and private schools?
Yeah, so first off, I'm going to say I'm not a big fan of public funds going to private schools as vouchers due to various concerns around access and accountability. With that being said, though, it is a reality. It's law. And we lost a lot of time when we kind of pushed away charter schools at first, and I don't want to make that the same mistake. So we need to engage and communicate with whoever the private schools that are receiving funding for our kids. So I'm also the only candidate that has both traditional and charter school experience as a teacher and a principal. At the end of the day, they're all our kids. The kids fluidly move between charter school, traditional neighborhood school, magnet school. So it would be best for the kids if we were able to communicate and collaborate and work together to do what's best. We need to form stronger partnerships. Kelly got it right. We need to form stronger partnerships. We need to work out these innovative ideas together. And I do believe good competition is healthy competition is what's better for kids.
Great, thank you. All right, Lou, same question.
Yes, yes, I agree. Very articulate answers. I'm like Corey. I'm uncomfortable with tax money going to private charter schools. We have had parochial schools for a long time. We've got elite schools. We've got Episcopal private schools where more affluent parents have been sending their kids for a long time with their choice. as far as public schools go, shoot, now, the cost of maintaining a brick and mortar school in these days of virtual learning is another consideration. Shoot, you could have something like a charter school with a parent and their siblings, because there's so much homeschooling going on. So you can consider that kind of a charter school, because we parents are our children's first teachers. So helping out homeschool kids too would be something that I would consider, and maybe to the same level of funding as the public school kids. It's complex, but I'm for neighborhood schools. That's what I'm for, neighborhood schools, walk to school, bike.
Awesome. Thank you, Lou. I really appreciate you all. This next question actually comes to us from our partners at the Duval County Council of PTAs. And Corey, we'll start with you this time. Sometimes candidates run for school board with limited hands-on experience in our schools, whether as a parent, a volunteer, a teacher, or other roles. Can you tell us specifically what schools in DCPS you have worked with or in, and what roles you were in, what impact you made, and how you were affected by that experience?
Yeah, so first of all, I attended Justina Elementary, Merrill Road Elementary, James Weldon Johnson Middle School, and Terry Parker High School. That's where I went. I was a teacher at Lake Forest Elementary. I was a teacher at KIPP Jacksonville. I was a teacher, and I'm currently teaching right now at S.A. Hall Elementary. I've also been a principal at KIPP Jacksonville. My wife was also a teacher and educator, and she's taught at Terry Parker at Lake Lucina, Parkwood Heights. And my children attend our local neighborhood school, Lake Lucina in Fort Caroline. All of these places are very important to me and my family. And I've made wonderful relationships with my students, with my parents, with my colleagues. And I hope, at the end, I've been able to return what I've learned from all of my different experiences.
Thanks, Corey. Lou, your connection to the schools in Duval County and what you've taken from those experiences?
Yes, I started at Northwestern Middle School, a de facto segregated school, 98% African American. I was in a dropout prevention program there with an English teacher, and the discipline was very strict. It was good. It was necessary. From there, I went to Arlington Elementary School in our district. I was an elementary counselor there. Also a brief time at Thomas Jefferson. Then John Love Elementary School for a year, where I was involved in special education packets and referrals as the guidance counselor. Then to Highlands, where I had my most success. I was able to coach basketball, and Reggie Lewis, who played for the National Championship Gators, was one of my players as a 7th and an 8th grader. Really enjoyed that. And my last 3 years were at Kirby Smith Middle School, which is a magnet school. So I've had a lot of experience at the elementary, mostly at the middle school level.
Thank you, Lou. Kelly, your connection to various schools in Duval County and what you've taken from those experiences?
Sure. It's hard for me in a minute to sum up 27 years of my life that I've spent working in Duval County Public Schools, and it's been a privilege, and it's been an incredible journey, an incredible ride. I will say that in the end, there are a couple of things I'm most proud of and were most impactful, I think. One was the $1 million federal grant that I was allowed to write to take Landon from what was 5 points from an F to an M to, in the end, we turned it around, gave it a choice school option, and it did become an A school, and it was a top 10 school in the state of Florida when I left. But the real thing that I think that I'll take to my grave is the work that I was able to do with principals around graduation rate and getting to those record high graduation rates, not just overall, but among subgroups, African Americans, ESE, Hispanics and whatnot, knowing that you were helpful in making sure that children got diplomas that might not have otherwise is just stuff that matters. It mattered to them, and it changed who I was.
All right, Kelly, thank you so much. All right, so this is a question from the NAACP. And, I would kind of preface this saying that, I think we find that some communities need a little bit more prodding to be engaged and make sure that they're attending meetings. And a lot of these communities are the ones that are impacted the most. So from the NAACP, What does community engagement mean to you? Why is it important? And how would you achieve this goal to engage more of the community as a board member to pack those school board meetings? And please share what type of activities that you will implement to keep your constituents knowledgeable about DCPS policies, programs, goals, and any of those resources that are out there to provide support. And I'll start that question and direct it to Lou.
Community involvement back in neighborhood schools. Hello, is it my turn?
Yes.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yes. Neighborhood schools, that's key to me. There should be pride in the school. I go with the song, be true to your school. There should be school pride. There should be grade level pride. There should be classroom pride. And so I'm big into token economies, reinforcement, incentivizing, catching and being good. Those are the big things that I think. When I think of community support, I think of pride in place, bloom where you're planted. And that's what I think about it.
So Lou, let me just ask a follow-up to that. How do you see yourself engaging, especially communities of color, to say, hey, this is important. I need to come to a school board meeting. I need to, make sure that my child is engaged in doing homework.
Yes. Well, if it's virtual schooling, there's going to be less emphasis on writing. You're going to be tapping on your laptop. I thought it was great in terms of community support that laptops were given out. In fact, I thought laptops were given out to most of the students, and then I heard a figure that was only like 800 students. So, and then once students have laptops or PCs to use from their homes during this pandemic, then do they have internet access? I think that should be something to help in the whole city. I think we should look at internet access for the whole city. That, it's maybe, what do they call that? A varied rate of paying for it. I know with Cox, another home in Gainesville, is $40 a month, but that's low speed. And a lot of kids want to play games, but you don't need high speeds to have that interactive, I call it a therapeutic working relationship. Parents are our children's first teachers, and we need to help.
Okay, thank you, Lou. Thank you. Sorry. All right, Kelly, we do have the same question. I'll just remind you, it's what does community engagement mean to you? Why is it important? How would you achieve that goal as a board member? And then also, what types of activities would you implement to get parents and students involved?
Sure. So community engagement is necessary. We can't do education alone, just ourselves, teachers, principals with children. We've got to have community engagement to solve the issues and deal with the things we need to deal with. We're kind of fortunate over here, though, in School Board District 1. Joyce Morgan, I got to give a shout out to her. She has community meetings on a routine basis. And a lot of our parents and a lot of our community go to those. So I would want to build off of what she does and have a communications plan similar to what she's done, where we're having routine meetings where our parents are invited to come out. We put together information on any program changes or policy changes, but also just to educate and be there and have a routine time that we connect with them so that they know they can count on that to occur. And then also using things like emails and auto dials and other social media to reach them as well. But again, those community meetings would be a huge part in having that communication plan in place to keep us all on track and headed in the right direction.
All right, Kelly, thank you. Corey, same question.
Did we lose Corey? No. Corey, you're on mute.
Hey, sorry, I left real quick and I came back. Sorry.
Okay, I'll redirect the question. It was about community engagement from the NAACP. What does it mean to you? Why is it important? How would you achieve this goal as a board member for your districts? And then also, what type of activities would you implement to keep your constituents informed about different resources available to them? And then, yes.
Yeah, so as a teacher and a parent, this is super important to me. Any communication I would send out is always from a place of understanding the parent perspective. So I'm here to work shoulder to shoulder with our parents, we need to meet them where they are. If that means virtual meetings, if that means coming to your house and facilitating conversations with people on your block, we'll do that too. As a teacher and principal, I'd always give out I'd always give out my personal phone number for parents to call or text me. I'd always do visitations at their students' homes to meet them, their families in their place, because that's different. The schoolhouse feels different than in their home, and I think we need to be able to reach our families right where they are.
Thank you. Rachel, I think you have the next question. Do we lose Rachel?
Can you guys hear me?
Oh, yeah, there she is. Okay.
Sorry about that. I'm back. Internet went out for a second there. But I'm so excited to transition us into the next part of our discussion, because teachers are, of course, the #1 most important factor in our schools for student learning. And we know that student data shows that fewer young people are pursuing education careers, unfortunately, and that approximately 50% of teachers leave Duval County Public Schools within the first 5 years. We also know that a diverse teaching workforce can improve outcomes for students, and that our teacher workforce isn't as diverse as our student body. I'll start with Kelly for this question. What can DCPS do to recruit and retain a high quality and diverse teaching force?
Sure. So I think there is a three-pronged approach here. I think we've got to have some lobbying efforts. We've got to do professional training, and we've got to look at quality induction programs. The lobbying efforts, we need to find funding to create pathways for our current paraprofessionals who are incredibly talented to become certificated teachers. We need more funding to support early college programs that put students on the path to becoming education majors and teachers in the long run. We need to be looking for loan forgiveness programs for people who come into the profession. And we need to be looking at mentoring programs and funds for mentoring programs for those teachers who are in years 1 through 3. I know that pay is something that people talk about as a reason for people leaving, and certainly that needs to be accounted for, but school culture is also, and so we need to make sure we're training our principals and providing ways to connect with those first-year teachers and making sure we're providing a positive culture for them to build and grow as beginning educators as well.
Awesome. Thanks, Kelly. Corey, what can DCPS do to recruit and retain a high quality and diverse teaching force?
Yeah, so obviously teachers have the #1 impact on student achievement. And survey, like Kelly just said, surveys have said beyond salary, teachers want to feel supported and they want to feel successful and from their leaders and coached by their leaders. So the #1 business of our district should be leader and teacher development. And there are several organizations we could partner with, and we have partnered with, and they have dug deep into this about how to provide teachers that support, that coaching and feedback. Because right now we do have a gap in our teachers coming in, but we're also losing teachers at a high rate. So we got to be able to attract, retain, train, and empower teachers. Teachers want to feel empowered. So why reinvent the wheel? There are lots of people who've already had this. Let's bring them to the table and we'll collaborate with them.
Thanks, Corey. Lou, what do you believe that DCPS can do to recruit and retain a high quality and diverse teaching force?
Students need to feel that a teacher cares before they care what they know. And when people are stressed and overwhelmed with numbers of students or with the social and emotional needs of students that are trying to get attention, I would reduce the stress of these teachers. We know the 4 reasons for misbehavior. It's defined by the acronym WRAP, W-R-A-P. And a professor at Florida, Max Parker, said it all comes down to P, personal power. Student, teacher, administrator, everybody wants to feel self-efficacy and like they have something to say and something meaningful to accomplish. Well, if somebody wants to withdraw, if a student wants to withdraw, they should have a timeout area. This will help teachers, including teachers. Teachers should be able to say, timeout, I need a break. The R stands for revenge. It's amazing how many people say, oh, they did it to me, so I'm going to do it back to them. That revenge factor, that's a reason for misbehavior. And then the old saw attention. Oh, they just want attention. Well, a lot of people want attention, and they should be able to achieve it in ways that don't disrupt and that contribute to the cooperation in those classrooms. That's how.
Thank you, Lou. Melanie, I think you're the next question.
We did everybody on that one?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, I'm sorry. I was so quick. All right. This is so important, and it is going to be even more important post-pandemic with our children, being isolated and needing to talk to someone. And there's a lot of resources out there. There's a lot of new money out there that I think our parents don't necessarily know about. So the 2019 Youth Risk Behavior Survey showed that Duval County students are experiencing bullying, attempts to commit suicide. They're doing drugs more than the state average. That's scary stuff. So how would you prioritize budget dollars? We have a lot of them out there, been redirected to this. It's a good thing, but want to make sure these programs are good for mental health for students, especially post-COVID. So specifically that as well. So I'll ask that question first to Corey about how these dollars should be used.
Yeah, so especially post COVID-19, and we're trying to get back to school. We need to prioritize mental health services for students. There's a saying that I use in my classroom. We go slow to go fast. We need to go slow and make sure that we're meeting kids where they are. They've been out for a long time. My kids, they're struggling to keep their friendships going as they're no longer with each other. So we need to make sure we're prioritizing their mental health. So that we could do is increase the number of counselors that serve our schools. We could do that by partnering with organizations who already provide these services to the students that we already serving. Some way to do that, we could offer them some space within our schools, especially in the buildings that already have a lot of kids that are receiving these services. We need to be a clear partner with our mental health counselors.
Corey, thank you. Lou, I'll ask that question to you next about how to prioritize these dollars for mental health for our students.
That's right in my wheelhouse. Melanie, peer facilitator programs are key. We're going to train 5th and 6th graders, give them core facilitative conditions. We're going to train them to be good listeners so that the comprehensive developmental guidance program that we want in all our schools, happens. Yes, that's the key to me. Mental health is key. Now, there's so many mixed messages that kids are getting, that adults are getting. You can have, there are 3 qualities about any product or service. It's good, fast, cheap. You can't have 2 out of 3. If it's going to be good and fast, it won't be inexpensive. I prefer good and inexpensive. So I'm not a speed guy. And go slow to go fast, that's a mixed message to me. I'm sorry, Corey. So peer facility.
Okay. Kelly, same question. Kelly, we need you to.
Okay. I don't think this is as simple as prioritizing funding. I think there can be some of that to get us started, but I think there needs to be a full out lobbying effort. And in listening to interviews of other superintendents across the state, they're starting to talk about this as well. There's a reality that the needs in this area are just too big and too vast to just pick up a pocket in our current budget. And so I think the lobbying comes in. I think we also need to work collaboratively, as Corey said, with nonprofit organizations that are here on the ground, local medical providers, our philanthropic community, and also to help bridge gaps in this area. I want to make sure that the listeners that are on this hear this. one of the points of this was that there was a 10-year increase on children considering suicide. It was an increase of 14.2% to 22.7% of those who actually said they were going to consider suicide, and 10.8 to 18.9% for those that were actually going to attempt it. We can no longer just look at that as a little issue. We have got to provide comprehensive mental health training to students that also extends to families when needed.
All right, thank you, Kelly. And I do want to direct, to give Corey an opportunity to deliver a rebuttal to Lou, since he mentioned, going slow to move fast. I don't know if you wanted to comment on that.
Yeah, Lou. So yeah, slow to go fast. So we've got to take our time and get things right, especially for kids. And when I think, for me, my background is in kindergarten to second grade. Like, little kids we need to take it slow, make sure they understand what's happening. We understand what's happening to them, so then we can push learning on. It would be bad if we try to cram a bunch of learning on top of their fragile state. That's what I meant by that.
Thank you.
Awesome. Now we want to talk about the half-penny sales tax for school facilities that voters will decide on during the general election on November 3rd. Lou, what's your position on the half-penny sales tax? If you're opposed, what do you propose instead to solve our substantial facilities problem and maintenance backlog?
There are two forms of power. There's money power and there's people power. Especially with COVID going on right now, do we really need to tax people more for the brick and mortar facilities when we may be downsizing and homes might be venues for education moving forward? Who knows? So, but I'm not an accountant. I'm not into budgeting. I'm going to be one of 7 school board members. So I'm willing to listen to both sides on this issue, but I'm frankly undecided right now whether to support or to oppose the half-penny sales tax increase.
And what if you have any thoughts on what we might do to solve the substantial facilities problem and maintenance backlog, the second part of that question?
Well, cleanliness is next to godliness, and you can have an old home, a home or facility, school, but it's important that you keep it clean. So I'm going to emphasize, and at Kirby Smith, there was a recycling company right across the street. And so I, took all the waste paper, the aluminum, and actually trucked it across the street. And we had an account to make some money at Kirby Smith. It wasn't really supported by a lot of the folks. I felt like a kind of a lone ranger, and that's how guidance counselors are. We're not administrators, kind of telling. We're not teachers that are doing the instruction so much. We're kind of in the middle, and that's why I did so much classroom guidance activity. And so the money issue, I think there should be more token reinforcements, pencils, activities that are fun. We should have more field trips for kids. So I know that takes more money too, but we've got a $1.6 billion budget in this district. And it seems like, that another tens of millions, I don't know if this can make that much difference.
Thank you, Lou. Kelly, what's your position on the half-penny sales tax? And if you're opposed, do you have other thoughts on how we address our facilities challenges?
Yeah, I absolutely am in support of the half-penny sales tax. Having been a principal at 2 different school sites and worked in a number of other school sites, our teachers and our children, they deserve better than what they have. They deserve to be in classrooms where the air conditioner isn't so loud that the child can't even hear the teacher talk. They deserve to be in classrooms that don't have literally crumbling walls around them. They deserve better than that. So I'm fully supportive of it and have been the entire time. That being said, I do want to make sure I mention that we need to have transparency if it's passed. We need to have things like an independent auditor that's watching how the funds are being spent and making sure they're being spent in a way that befits the taxpayers and the intent of the taxpayers in our city. We need that auditor to produce quarterly reports or routine reports so that the city knows what's happening with those funds. And there should also be meetings that are held in communities, going where the people are, to talk about the progress that's being made, not just in that community, but across the district as well. So communication becomes a piece of the puzzle also.
Excellent. Thanks, Kelly. Corey, your position on the half-penny sales tax, and if opposed, of course, what are your proposed solutions?
No, I am definitely in favor of it. I'm a champion of it. I think for me, this goes back to my core campaign message of equity. So access to buildings, to quality buildings, is a form of equity. The last time there was a building boom in Jacksonville in our schools was when schools were segregated, and not all schools are built the same quality. There is no other dedicated stream right now for capital infrastructure and to new buildings. And so I think this is exactly what we need to get our schools becoming the jewel of the neighborhood that they are, and building that pride that I think all neighborhoods have. And I think exactly what we need to do is get this passed. I'm on board.
Thank you, Corey. So this next question is interesting because as we saw the whole debate of when it was going to go for a vote with the half-cent sales tax, there was a lot of questions as to which schools would get the money first. And there was some concern about releasing that information because maybe voters wouldn't support it if they didn't see their school in that number. But the superintendent made it clear that you have to prioritize based on the year and how old a school is and the need of that school at that specific moment. So in your district, should this pass, what is your approach on how schools should be prioritized to receive these upgrades first within your district? Is it age? Is it neighborhood? Is it by school grade? Is it by need? And I will propose that first to Kelly, please.
So those that know me know I'm a bit of a data nerd and did data and analytics for the district for a period of time in my career. And I actually think you need to take a couple of pieces and put them together in a formula. One, you need to look at the age of the facility itself. And then two, you need to look at stability of enrollment. Stability of enrollment can be defined in a lot of different ways. In this case, I would define it as having the stable enrollment over a stable or increasing enrollment over a 3-year period of time. What I wouldn't want to see is taxpayer dollars being spent in a school where the enrollment is dwindling, maybe because of housing patterns, not something intended, it just occurs. We need to be spending the money where our children are and can most access the improvements. I would say one little caveat to that. I think there's got to have a little bit of room, respectfully, for the superintendent to maybe come from time to time and bring a school that doesn't meet those conditions, but maybe having a program overhaul that would allow for the recruitment of students if the program were brought in. I think Andrew Jackson and work done there a few years ago would be a prime example of that.
So if I could just ask a follow-up, Kelly, if the enrollment isn't going up, and I understand you're saying that she should have some leeway in making that decision, if a school's in great need and there's still hundreds of students in that school, right, how do you kind of level the playing field as far as their learning conditions?
Sure. I think you take care of safety to life issues and you make sure that the environment is conducive to learning, but those big ticket items that are needed across the district, maybe you are looking at a large auditorium or something along those lines. We may have to think through that piece, but I will say safety to life issues and just making the environment conducive is a different story.
Thank you. Thank you. Okay. The question to Corey, and again, it's just, should the half-penny sales tax pass? What is your approach on how the schools in your district would be given their upgrades?
Well, taking it from a safety and equity lens, that being the start of the conversation, and then we also we look at who needs it the most. We look at age of the building, but not just age. We also should look at the current backlog cost. So if the cost to continue to operate that school outweigh a rebuild or renovation costs, then we should bump those schools to the top. And I agree with Kelly. I think there should be some wiggle room because there are going to be outliers at some point for maybe it's not a rebuild, maybe it's not a full-on renovation, but there might be parts of it that need to be brought up to a higher standard. And so, but it's safety and equity have got to be the top of mind during that conversation.
Corey, thank you. And Lou, same question.
I'd prioritize based on need and especially the need of maintaining a high quality food service. As a kitchen is the heart of the home, I think the kitchen and the cafeteria is the heart of a school. When I was a test coordinator at Kirby Smith, I gave my makeup standardized testing in the cafeteria, for students that had been missed during the regular time. And keeping that cafeteria clean, looking modern, using the wall space to put posters that inspire, using art, especially in the cafeteria and the kitchens of the schools that need it, that need upgrades and improvement in those areas.
Awesome. Thank you. Thank you all so much. Well, that actually concludes the questions that Melanie and I had predetermined for our time. And this means we're at the wonderful part of the program where we get to share some questions from the audience, those who are tuning in via Zoom and via Facebook Live. So if you have not already and you have a question, please go ahead and use the comments feature on Facebook Live to submit your comment, or the chat feature on Zoom to submit your question. The first question we'll direct to Corey first. And that question is, Corey, what do you believe the school board is doing well?
Right now, especially right now, I think my thoughts are about school opening. As a teacher and as a parent, I've got a lot of questions and concerns about that. So I think the school board is engaging with the superintendent, and they're engaging with the community in a way that they're trying to figure out what's the best solution for all parties. I think like when there's well-intentioned plans, and I believe that they're listening to the concerns of all stakeholders. And I think right now there's a lot of leadership showing through on our board when it comes to the crisis and reopening schools. There's a lot of tension between the state level and the local levels across the state, and I think they're doing a good job of managing that.
Excellent. Thanks, Corey. Lou, what do you think the school board is doing well?
Gosh, I've been out of the school system quite some time. What's the school system doing well? What is the school system doing well? The graduation rate has gone up. I've heard a lot of things from both Corey and Kelly that's going well in terms. The good is the enemy of the better. So however, whatever good they're doing, there's room for improvement, because if you're satisfied with how things are going, where's your motivation to improve? So I would like to see improvement in terms of honesty, curriculum, so many mixed messages. We hear out of one side of the mouth that work hard and merit will get you ahead. And then you hear some people say, some kids say, if you're not cheating, you're not trying. That kind of mixed messaging will short circuit kids and adults' minds for that matter. So we need to emphasize honesty. So I don't know if we've been doing such a good job of being honest with our students and our parents.
Thank you, Lou. Kelly, what is the school board doing well from your perspective?
Yeah, I'm going to echo a lot of what Corey said and his sentiments. I think they're doing a great job of listening to parents, being reflective in their questions and their thought process about how do we open schools and do it in a way that's safe for everyone involved, and balancing what's coming out of Tallahassee with what our parents and our community are saying at the same time. And I just think they're doing a great job. I would add another topic to that, though. I think they're also doing that as it relates to the school names. I think they've been handed two really challenging issues simultaneously. I don't recall a time where boards had to handle two issues this big all at the same time. And I just applaud them for listening to the community and trying to do their best to get us where we need to get on behalf of children.
Kelly, thank you so much. All right, so our next question from the audience, and Kelly, I'm gonna keep it on you. So how do you plan to overcome the digital divide where access to the internet and computers is related to family income?
Sure. So I actually supported IT at a point in my career, and what I'll say is that I think we have to look at, there are national grants, grants out there, national programs out there that help us to put those types of resources in the hands of children. And I think we have to research those and use those. The district is currently using some of those as they've been able to put internet ability and access in some of the hands of children who need it most. We've been able to put laptops in the hands of children that need it most. And I think that we need to continue down that vein as well. I'd love to see us to get to a day and age where every child has their own laptop from day one, and that's part of what you issue to a child at the beginning of the school year. We know the research says that if you give a child a laptop and it's theirs for the whole school year, they actually take better care of it. They manage it better, and we get it back in better shape at the end of the school year when we do that. So again, but researching nationally out there programs and grant opportunities that allow us to make that kind of thing happen, because the dollars for it are pretty insurmountable.
Mm-hmm. Thank you, Kelly. All right, Lou, same question about how you can make sure you can level the playing field when it comes to having access to internet and devices.
Yeah, I think it's a very high priority to have citywide free internet access. You know, the internet, I believe it uses radio waves, and our public television stations and National Public Radio should be tools of the school system. There should be a lot more cooperation between public television and public radio and our schools and our classrooms. Low power radio stations are possible. Kids love, remember with the telephone days, kids love to get on the phone and feel like they're being heard. This is why these questions from the audience are more appealing to so many more of the listeners. So that's one of the highest priorities, is to better the communication.
So Lou, let me just ask you, how would you suggest getting them in the hands of these children and families?
Getting the computers into the hands, I like Kelly's idea. You know, give them a computer for the year, have them some ownership on that, and then if they have access to the internet, then they're going to use it, and it's going to be we're only as good as the tools we use, and there's no better tool than the internet these days for getting information. It's not lack of information these days that's so critical, it's culling the information that's pertinent to our needs, and kids basically want to have fun. So as far as funding, we should find the money. I mean, Kelly at the DTU conference talked about looking at programs, shifting funds from programs that aren't doing so well. So, you know, the idea that the military industrial complex gets billions for a jet fighter and that schools have to scrap and scrimp for money is outrageous, and it should change.
Thank you, Lou. And Corey, same question, and I'll just circle back. It was how you can level the playing field, overcome the digital divide when it comes to internet and computers, and how it relates to a family's income.
Yeah. So for me, it was beyond just access and computers. So I was a teacher when we shut down the schools. I lost contact with all but 3/4 of the kids. So 1/4 of the kids just fell right off the grid. And it wasn't because of just having a computer or not. The support is equally as important. I spent the first month of my online teaching really doing a lot of tech support. You know, getting on, doing a FaceTime with a parent to help them figure out how to get to the internet, how to get to our site that we're using for virtual learning. There was a lot of people. I mean, as much as I get to go ahead and call tech support, but the relationship was there with the teacher. So I think it's more than just the computer and internet, but it's support as well. And if that's not going to work for the family, we need to make sure that they have access to a building where they can come and use the facility there with somebody that can guide and support them.
Excellent. Thanks, Corey. Lou, we'll start our next question with you. This question comes to us again from the audience. Is anyone worried about the adequacy of clawback provisions of our tax money going to private investors who own buildings that house a charter school? Your thoughts on-
Yes, I'm concerned with public funds going to entrepreneurs, in quotes, that aren't educators, that are interested more in profit than in public service. I remember when there was talk, public service was something, when people got into politics or into education generally, even academia, not for the increase in salary, but for those benefits of teaching, that what, back to Maslow, of self-actualization, feeling like you're having an impact in bettering this world. So yeah, I have a real problem with for-profit companies being involved in public education.
Thank you, Lou. Kelly, and the question again was, is anyone worried about the adequacy of clawback provisions of our tax money going to private investors who own buildings that house a charter school?
Sure. So I'll agree with Lou. I'm not a big fan of the for-profit charters. I'll throw that out there. But I will say that I think we've got to look at how we do our contracts with the charter schools. And we've got to look at if our taxpayer dollars are going into those schools and improvements are being made on the real estate, then we need to look at over time, if that school closes or when that school closes, that those funds be paid back at a certain rate to ensure that the taxpayers get their money back. And whether that comes back to the district and then uses a district, or whether it goes back to FDOE, I'm not sure. But in the end, we're talking about taxpayer dollars that don't need to go into individuals' pockets. They need to come back to the taxpayer and back to the public schools.
Awesome. Thanks, Kelly. Corey, your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, I'm the same boat. Like, if the money, our money, is going to fill the pockets of other people, I don't think that's where we need to be. But I think we should be thinking about this a little differently too. We do have empty schools within our district, so why not, instead of pushing charter schools away, we could be talking about how charter schools could be leasing some of those empty schools to us, to them. We could be leasing them to them. We can cover costs. They have a building, and if they were to leave, that building stays within the public domain. So I don't know, that's another way that we could be thinking about this, and that'll ensure that those monies don't go into a for-profit real estate business.
All right, Corey, I'm going to keep it on you for the next audience question. These are good. If you had to eliminate funds from the budget, which area or line item would you cut first and why?
I think step one is like school is going to be different from now on. How the things that are going to be funded will be different. I think there's a matter of like putting things on the table. Like, you know, there's something in my family, what we do, right? When something changes, something shifts, we put things on the table, we look at what we have, and we prioritize those things. I know we've spent a lot of money on a school police. Some of those funds, since we're not going to have as many kids on campus, maybe we could be moving some of those funds around to move them to mental health or some other aspects like that. I think you put everything on the table, you reprioritize with the current state of schools, and I think we go from there.
Thank you. All right, Kelly, then I'll just repeat the question. Eliminating funds from the budget, which area or line item would you cut first and why?
So I'll start by saying I'm grateful that Corey got the question first so that I had time to think about it. Corey, well done. That being said, I think a couple of things. I think I would add to Corey's conversation about the fact that when we come back from this COVID, it may be that certain services we spend a lot of money on, we don't need as much money. And I think he's right. There could be some shifting of dollars that goes on. But I also think that, and this gets back to my data and analytics background, we've got to be running data on the programs that we're using out there. And if we've got a program that's supposed to be helping children in regards to literacy, we've got to be running the numbers and making sure that that's really happening. If the return on investment isn't there, then we need to abandon that program and find a program that truly works for our students, for our teachers, for our parents, and our schools. So I think it's a combination of items. Again, looking at the data, return on investment, and taking into account funding there. And then again, like Corey said, I think we're going to have a different landscape when we come back from COVID. I think things will be different, and we may shift funds around as well.
Thank you. And Lou, finally.
Yeah, I'm glad I'm last on this one because, you know, once money is budgeted, people take ownership on it, you know, program directors and such. It just occurred to me when it was, Corey was talking, you know, football, it's a collision sport. I played basketball in high school and college. You know, I remember at Highlands Middle School, a kid came into school limping, and he said, "Oh yeah, my buddy, you know, hit me in the knee," and you know, that damage to his knee is going to affect him the rest of his life. I wouldn't have any heavy contact football. I'd take money from football and maybe replace it with flag football up until maybe senior year, when a significant number of our high school students that are athletes, that love football, love contact, will be allowed to play. I met Joe Klecko in Savannah, and he said his parents wouldn't let him play. He was a member of the New York Sack Exchange. And there's some community members here that played on that professional football team. And he said his parents wouldn't let him play contact football until his senior year, I believe it was.
Awesome. Thank you, Lou. Thank you all. That was a tough question, and appreciate everybody's thoughts on that. Kelly, we'll start with you for the next one. The audience would like to know, how would you express your opposition to one of the superintendent's initiatives or
Rachel, I'm going to ask, you're freezing a little. Yeah, Rachel, you were.
Oh, did I?
There, you want to go again? Thanks.
Oh, yes. Sorry about that. Yes, the audience is wondering, how would you express your opposition to one of the superintendent's initiatives or recommendations?
Sure. What I would say to you is that the superintendent is charged with the day-to-day work of the district, the day-to-day mechanisms, the day-to-day operations, and we have to trust the superintendent an awful lot to make things happen. Should she bring something to the board that I have concerns about, I would want to ask those questions during workshop. And as a cabinet member, I sat in workshop and I've seen our board members do that effectively and in action. And with the hopes that the superintendent would be able to explain to me why this needs to be done. If I'm still in opposition with it, I certainly would want to ask more questions, get more feedback and such. And if it comes to it, then of course vote against whatever the recommendation is. But I would want to do the homework, ask the questions, and work collaboratively with the superintendent to understand the intent of what she's doing before I do that before I vote against it.
Thank you, Kelly. Corey?
Yeah, very similar to Kelly. Like, I would do my due diligence to make sure that I come from all my questions come from a place of curiosity. If there's a disagreement, I want to understand the why. I think that's super important, because at the end of the day, I will also be held accountable for the decision being made. So I want to be on board with it, or if not, I want to make sure that I've done that I've expressed my concerns in a way that the superintendent understands. It is about questioning. It's about getting feedback. If there's something I'm disagreeing with, get feedback from people. Reach out to the community and pick their brains about something, assuming that I can, if it's something that we can discuss with the community, and then figure out like where we should stand with this. And but I think it all comes back to this idea of curiosity.
Thank you, Corey. Lou, how would you approach that?
Yes, if I had a disagreement with the superintendent or any person in position of authority, I'd want to hear their rationale. As people, we tend to be much more rationalizing than rational people, than rational beings. So So strong beliefs are not easily countered without some of what's called emotional reactivity. So, you know, it's like the old Allman Brothers song, Wasted Words. All you really got is yes or no. So if I'm hesitant about something, you know, I hopefully the information that the superintendent gives will get me on board. Or as Kelly and Corey have said, then I might have to vote against it. But at least we'll disagree agreeably. We won't disagree. We won't disagree disagreeably.
Thank you, Lou. And I'm actually going to keep it on you for this next question. And this is important because the school district's so close to an A and they've worked so hard. So what would you do as a school board member to ensure the district gets an A grade? And especially considering that we have some schools that are Ds while others are As, kind of balancing that out. So it's addressing those lower rated schools as well, or graded schools as well.
Again, right in my wheelhouse, because when I went to the grading system began when I was here and in the aughts, and when I went to Kirby Smith, we were a C school, and it was a magnet school, you know, with the space shuttle there, and kids coming from all over the district to it. So we were a C school. So I developed a program in the guidance office called the Birthday Brilliance Program, in which when kids had birthdays, I would personally, during the elective, hand them a little sheet, a little pep talk type of thing, and say, you know, our goal is to become a B school, a better school. When we became a better school that next year, then I changed it to the annual anniversary acknowledgement program, so that we were a B school. Again, we were good, but we needed to be better. So I would use alliteration. In fact,
Thanks, Lou.
That's it.
Thank you, Lou. Corey, same question. Again, this is from the audience. What would you do as a school board member to ensure the district bumps up to that A?
Yeah, I think accountability, you know, is one of the tools that a school board member has. Accountability to hold the superintendent accountable for meeting those results. I think about some policies that we could free up and put into action if that's what the superintendent would do, is empowering teachers and leaders. I think one of the biggest assets we have are teachers and leaders, and making sure that reaching through the teachers and leaders in our schools that are so close. It's all those kids that are kind of add them up, and the ones that are so close, and what do those schools think that they can do? I put the ball in the court of the schools and the leaders and teachers there. I think that's something that as a policy we can free up some of the restrictions of how the curriculum is played out in those schools, so they have a little more flexibility.
Thank you, Corey. Kelly, same question.
Sure. So first off, and I've referenced my background with data, I think that you have to watch the data in regards to not just the overall data piece and the progress monitoring piece and all those kinds of things, but also looking at subgroups as it relates to those data points and making sure that every single subgroup is moving forward. What we don't want is to become an A district for some students and not an A district for all children. All children should be moving forward. This may sound simple, but I know as a teacher, as a principal, as a district leader, championing who they are and championing their work and being a cheerleader for them. I can remember times when my school board member would stop by and just celebrate my work, and it would keep me working tirelessly for another 6 months. It didn't have to happen very often. And then finally, I think we've got to actively engage our parents as a part of the process. Moving the district grade isn't about just the children and teachers and school leaders. It's about parents too, and engaging them through like the Parent Academy and helping them to better help their children in the evening get those skills needed to help us bolster this district to an A.
Awesome, thanks, Kelly. Corey, we'll start with you for the next question. How will you ensure that you can be responsive, communicate timely, and help constituents with issues as they arise?
My phone number is on my website. Give me a call, give me a text, invite me to dinner. However we need to do to be available. I think it's important that leaders are accessible, especially when decisions are made for them. So I think I would just put it all out there. Reach me, call me, smoke signals, whatever you need to do. Get in touch with me. I'll be there.
Thanks, Kelly, or excuse me, Corey. Kelly, turning to you with that question, how would you be responsive to communicate with constituents as issues arise?
Sure. I would echo a lot of Corey's sentiments in terms of what he said, and just the fact that I would intend to be a very engaged board member. One of the things that I would also say is that I think all too often we get in this email thing. And I'm big on get the email and then pick up the phone and call the person and say, tell me what's really going on here, because that's how you get to the bottom of the problem. So I think when I look at how I would do it, again, there are times you've got to use electronics to be efficient and all that kind of good stuff. But in the end, I'm going to be about wanting to personally connect with people, personally talk to people, having those conversations, like Corey said, meeting people where they are so that we can really understand their perspective and what the issue is that they're grappling with.
Awesome. Lou, your thoughts on just being responsive and timely communication with stakeholders or constituents as issues arise? I think you're still on mute. There you go.
Yes, yes. Like my colleagues say, availability and accessibility, having those open channels. Yes, that's key. My phone number is on my website too, lewelge.com, LEWWELGE.com. Check it out.
All right, so when your phones blow up tonight, you know you put it out there. All right, so this is going to be our final question of the night as we near close to 7:45, and then we will have closing remarks from each candidate. It's a good one because we saw, City Council and the school board kind of go toe-to-toe when it came to this half-cent sales tax last year, and in some cases it got a little ugly, and we had people kicked out of school board meetings. So this question is, how do you plan to work with local and state elected officials to ensure what is best for students takes priority over politics? And again, I will pose that question to Kelly first.
Did you say Corey or Kelly?
I'm sorry, Kelly. Yeah, Kelly. Corey, you dodged it.
Corey, I'm glad you weren't hearing it either. You get a minute, I'll take it for you, okay? That being said, what I will tell you is that I'm big on collaboration and bringing people to the table. I don't want a problem in our district to play itself out on the front page of the Times-Union and be unnecessarily. There are reasons for journalists to exist, but it doesn't need to be for that in particular. I really I believe in bringing people to the table, asking the right people that are going to be impacted by an issue to come to the table and listening to people, because I think in the end in Jacksonville, there are a lot of people that want to see our city move forward. They're willing to give a little to get us where we need to get. And I think sometimes we'll have to give a little, and then other times other people will have to give a little. But in the end, if we're moving the district forward, we're moving the city forward, and that's good for everyone involved.
Thank you, Kelly. Lou, same question about collaborating with local and state elected officials so that kids are the priority.
Waiting for it to be unmuted.
You are unmuted.
I are. Yay. Yeah. Yeah, every problem is an opportunity. And it's not what happens to us is so important as how we handle it. And the distinction between reacting and responding, I think, is important. So reactivity, emotional reactivity happens a lot. There's so much frustration. People get loud and start thinking that they communicate better when they start yelling. But the best teachers and the best leaders know that when you really want to get somebody's attention, you lower your voice and stay calm so that you don't trigger somebody else. So you're not triggered. We don't want to trigger. People get triggered all the time because of the frustration. I'm going to try and reduce anxiety and frustration and worry in this world, and it's beginning in District 1.
Thank you, Lou. And Corey, same question. And I'll just kind of maybe narrow it a little bit, because a lot of what we saw last year was who had the power. Was it city council? Was it school board? So that was one of the real big debates that is still kind of ongoing. So could you kind of look at that and then try to look at this way to collaborate?
Yeah, so we have a system of laws, right? There are statutes, and they did get interpreted sometimes differently than how we think that they are. But I think as long as we root all the conversations we have in students and equity, if we have a town hall meeting where we bring the parties to the table and we talk through the problem, and as long as we keep it civil, I think. I'm a student over at the Public Policy Institute, and one of our core values is civility. We can't disagree ugly, right? We've got to have a conversation that roots all of our students into the center. And the other thing is like this idea of stewardship. We need to be future thinking. How do we think about not just the current state of what the law is or where it is, but what about the future? And sometimes it takes a harder decision now than it would be to kick it down the line. So I think it's about courage and stewardship and civility.
We're actually going to ask one more question before we go to closing, because it came up and we want to make sure we get to this one. The question around the charter schools, Melanie, did you?
Yeah, so this one came up and then it was questioned, so it's in the chat for everyone to see it. And we think it's important that this is clear, and it's a yes or no answer, so we should be able to knock it out quickly. So I'll send it first to Corey. And the question is are any of the candidates receiving money from the charter school industry?
As of now, no, I have not received any money from any of the charter schools.
And have you ever?
I mean, I worked at a charter school before,
Yes.
but
Okay.
I've nothing for my campaign. I've not received any contributions from any charter schools.
Okay, thank you, Corey. And Kelly, same question?
Yeah, I have not received any directly from any charter school entities or LLCs or anything along those lines. I will say, for full disclosure, there are some philanthropic people in the city that have been involved in some charter schools who have donated to my campaign. I always want to be transparent and honest, but no charter schools at all, no.
Thank you, Kelly. And then Lou, same question?
No money from charter schools. In fact, Melanie, no money from anybody. It's I've got the lowest budget campaign. You won't see signs for me. I will be going to, no money from charter schools, no money from anybody so far.
All right, thank you very much. Thank you. Rachel, I'll send it back to you.
Thank you. And I just want to thank you all again. That was a lot of questions in a short period of time, and all very important education issues. So we really, really appreciate you all for your time and your thoughtful responses. We now want to give 2 minutes to each candidate to make their closing remarks, and we'll go in alphabetical order. We'll start with Kelly Coker.
Sure. All right. So just a reminder that if elected, that I would be championing issues around reading and student workforce development, increasing community and school partnerships, and ensuring taxpayer dollar transparency. I'm not going to belabor all of it because I think we've talked an awful lot tonight, but those are some of the things that I'll be focused on. You can connect with us at www.votecoker.com, or you can connect with us on Facebook at Kelly Coker for School Board as well. I do want to make sure I say something though to my colleagues. This is the second time Corey and Lou and I have been together on a panel, and in a day and age when there's not much civility or civil discourse out there, and there's a lot of polarization going on, I just appreciate the fact that I'm running with two people that are keeping it positive, and we're keeping it upbeat, and we're not, doing some of the things that we see happening out there on the political landscape. So again, I just appreciate the dialogue for a second time with you guys. You've made me think some more tonight, and I appreciate that we're in this together.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Kelly. Corey Von Louis.
Yeah. Thank you for having this discussion tonight. Our schools are in uncharted territory right now, and no doubt school will be different from now on. Our main goal should be to focus on safety and equity. We need thoughtful, creative listening leaders who will not be afraid to leverage innovation to ensure that all students can thrive in both in-person and virtual school settings. We can't afford to continue to press play on our schools as usual. As a teacher during this past school year shutdown, I watched as our district switched within a week from brick and mortar to online classes. I saw firsthand the enthusiasm, the optimism that our school leadership had, and I am sure we will innovate our way out of this current situation. We have the potential and the capability of successfully navigating through this unprecedented time. I am the only candidate who has experienced what it's like to teach and parent school-age children during a pandemic. I'm an innovative leader with a record of proven results, and I have been involved with multiple innovative organizations who seek to work with communities to bring equitable strategies to empower students, teachers, and families. The work that I have found most fulfilling has involved facilitating conversations with hundreds of community members about what they want for their schools. This experience impressed upon me that no matter where someone lived in Jacksonville, they all wanted similar things for their children: a safe place to belong and thrive. I want to be your voice to ensure that we have safe and equitable schools where every child can succeed. Thank you for your time and support.
Excellent. Thank you, Corey. And Lou Welchie.
Hey, I get the last word. Lucky me. We should have gone in reverse alphabetical order that time. To sum up, while my fellow candidates, Ms. Coker and Mr. Von Louis, are fine people, I'm the more knowledgeable, experienced, and capable person to occupy the District 1 school board seat these upcoming 4 or 8 years. No boast, just fact. You see, I'm like the golden mean, just right, good fit candidate for numerous reasons. A principal one being my education and professional experience as a counselor. In the schools, the counselor's role is the middle ground between Ms. Coker's administration background, which is, by definition, an authoritative position, and Mr. Von Louis' vitally essential, yet inherently limited role as a classroom teacher. The counselor's mission to, quote, help people feel better about themselves and to help them, us, me, we, get along better with others. And this is a tip of the hat to Professor Emeritus Robert Bob Myrick at the University of Florida, that helping people feel better about themselves and get along better with other people is nearly perfectly suited for the leadership role in the Duval County School Board's District 1 office. Plus, I promise to bring Abraham Lincoln's nearly universal recognizable image, powerful persona, and lasting legacy via living history, presentations, performances, seminars into all the Duval County District 1 schools in my first year and to all the district schools well before the end of my tenure. Visit louwelgie.com for corroboration and to learn more. Thank you for this opportunity. Sincerely, Lou A. Lincoln Welgie.
Thank you, Lou. And even though this is closing, we actually will allow the other candidates to rebut or respond to kind of your remark there if they so choose. Kelly, do you have anything to say?
No, I think my record speaks for itself, and I'm really proud of all of the work I've done, and I'm grateful that I spent nearly 3 decades of my life in Duval County Public Schools serving our children and our teachers and our community. Thank you, Kelly. Corey?
Well, I just gonna say, so I am currently a teacher, but I've done other things as well. Been a principal as well, and I don't discount my parenting and other things like that too. Thanks, Lou.
Awesome. Thank you. Thank you all so very much. And on behalf of the Jacksonville Public Education Fund, I just want to thank the candidates, each and every one of you, for participating in this important community forum tonight. To all the attendees who took the time to log in, we are so very appreciative to you for spending your evening with us. I want to remind you of the importance of voting this election. We know that kids can't vote, yet our city's children are counting on you, the adults, to elect one of these candidates, one of these wonderful individuals to represent them at DCPS. Early voting is August the 3rd through the 16th, and the primary election is August the 18th. Thank you again so much for joining us this evening.
Thank you. Have a good evening. Great job, everybody.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thanks, guys. Rachel and Dryden, Melanie, we appreciate it.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.